The story we're about to delve into is one that is both tragic and deeply unsettling, involving deceit, betrayal, and ultimately, a horrifying act of violence. It's the tale of a family's dark secrets, a jealous wife, and the devastating consequences of a forbidden affair. This is the story of how a husband's affair with his stepdaughter ended in a grisly murder, one that would change everything for the family involved. The family's picture-perfect facade. At first glance, the McCall family seemed like any other middle-class family living in suburban America. Mark McCall, a successful businessman, had built a life he was proud of, marrying his wife, Sarah, in their late 20s. Together, they raised a family that appeared to be the model of happiness and success. Mark was a dedicated husband and father to his biological children, and Sarah, his wife, loved him deeply. They seemed to be the perfect couple, with a house, kids, and an idyllic family portrait that many would envy. However, as often happens behind closed doors, things were not as perfect as they seemed. The cracks in the foundation of their marriage began to form as Mark's attention started to wander. It wasn't long before a dangerous and illicit affair began to unravel the family's carefully crafted image. The affair with his stepdaughter. The affair began innocently enough. Mark, a man in his early 40s, began to spend more time with his stepdaughter, 19-year-old Jessica. She had been living with the McCall family since she was a young girl, and the relationship between Jessica and Mark had always been close, almost too close, some might say. As Jessica grew older, she became increasingly attractive, and her relationship with Mark began to take on a more inappropriate tone. What started as casual conversations and shared moments of familial bonding soon escalated into something far darker. Jessica, who had always craved her father's attention, became more and more flirtatious toward him, and Mark, caught in the emotional and psychological web of his own desires, did not resist. This was not just an affair between two consenting adults. It was a deeply disturbing breach of trust and familial boundaries. Jessica, feeling neglected by her mother Sarah, manipulated Mark's emotional vulnerabilities. She knew exactly how to play on his insecurities, feeding his desire for affection and attention. Before long, what had started as a simple affair became an all-consuming obsession. Mark and Jessica's secret relationship intensified, and they became more daring, taking risks and finding ways to hide their affair from Sarah, who remained completely unaware of the betrayal occurring under her roof. Sarah's growing suspicion. As time passed, Sarah began to sense that something wasn't right. She noticed Mark's increasing distance, his mood swings, and a lack of affection toward her. His behavior seemed odd, and there were signs that he was hiding something. It wasn't just the emotional withdrawal that troubled Sarah. It was the feeling that something more sinister was happening in the shadows of their family life. One night, Sarah decided to confront her husband. She had grown suspicious of his late nights, his secretive phone calls, and the sudden distance between them. When she asked him about it, Mark denied anything was wrong, but Sarah's gut told her otherwise. She couldn't shake the feeling that her husband was hiding something. In the months that followed, her suspicions only deepened. Sarah's fears became a reality one fateful evening when she discovered an unexpected clue, a hidden message on Mark's phone. The message was from Jessica, and it was enough to send Sarah into a state of shock. Mark's affair with his stepdaughter was no longer just a suspicion. It was a cruel reality. The betrayal hit Sarah like a ton of bricks. Her own daughter, the one she had raised, had been involved in a sexual relationship with her husband. The emotional devastation was overwhelming, and Sarah couldn't believe what she was reading. The jealous wife's rage. Betrayed and enraged, Sarah confronted her husband with the damning evidence. The argument was loud, emotional, and filled with accusations. Mark, now caught in his lies, attempted to deny everything, but the proof was undeniable. Sarah felt a mix of disbelief, anger, and heartbreak. How could her husband, the man she had loved and trusted, betray her in such a twisted way? But Sarah's anger was not just about Mark's infidelity. It was about the fact that Jessica, the daughter she had raised and loved as her own, had been complicit in the affair. The relationship between Sarah and Jessica had once been strong, built on years of bonding and trust. Now, everything was shattered. Sarah's anger festered, turning into something darker and more dangerous. In the heat of the moment, Mark tried to apologize, but it was too late. Sarah's rage was uncontrollable. She couldn't bear the thought of the two people she loved most in the world betraying her in such a callous and destructive way. Her mind raced with thoughts of revenge, thoughts of what she might do to reclaim her dignity and restore the balance she had lost. The grisly murder. The night of the murder came unexpectedly. Sarah, in her blind fury, decided that something had to be done. She couldn't just stand by and let the betrayal slide. The thought of her husband and her daughter, her stepdaughter, continuing to live their lives while she suffered was unbearable. Sarah believed that the only way to regain control of the situation, to bring some sense of justice to her broken world, was to take matters into her own hands. In the dead of night, while Mark and Jessica were in the house, Sarah retrieved a kitchen knife from the drawer. Quietly, she made her way toward Jessica's room, where the two had been meeting for their secret rendezvous. The tension in the air was palpable as Sarah stood outside Jessica's door, silently plotting what she would do next. With a rush of adrenaline, she burst into the room, catching Jessica off guard. In a single swift motion, Sarah attacked, stabbing her stepdaughter with brutal force. Jessica screamed in agony, but Sarah was beyond reason. Her rage consumed her as she continued to stab Jessica, not stopping until the young woman was dead. The violence of the attack was shocking, the kind of violence that comes from a mind overcome with jealousy and hatred. When Mark entered the room, he found Jessica lifeless on the floor, blood spilling everywhere. The horror of the scene hit him like a tidal wave, but before he could process what had happened, Sarah turned on him. In a daze of shock and anger, Sarah lashed out at her husband as well, stabbing him in a fit of fury. The aftermath and investigation. The police arrived at the McCall home just hours later, after neighbors had reported the screams coming from the house. They'd found a grisly scene. Jessica's body lay motionless, covered in blood, while Mark was barely alive, clinging to life after being stabbed by his wife. Sarah, standing over the bodies of both her husband and stepdaughter, was arrested without resistance. At first, Sarah claimed that the murder was an act of self-defense, that she had been provoked by the affair. However, as the investigation unfolded, the truth emerged. Detectives discovered the full extent of the affair, and the shocking details of Sarah's own rage and betrayal became clear. Sarah's emotions, clouded by jealousy and heartbreak, had driven her to murder. The investigation also revealed that Mark had never intended to end his affair with Jessica, and the two had been planning to run away together. The affair had been a source of great tension in the house, and Jessica's death was just the tragic end to a family destroyed by lies and deceit. The trial and conviction. Sarah's trial was a spectacle, with the details of the affair and the murder being dissected in court. The defense attempted to argue that Sarah's actions were a result of emotional trauma, but the prosecution painted a picture of a woman who had allowed her jealousy and rage to destroy everything. Sarah was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder, one for her stepdaughter, Jessica, and one for her husband, Mark. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, where she would serve her time, haunted by the tragic consequences of her own actions. The McCall family, once seen as the picture of suburban normalcy, was shattered, leaving behind only pain and regret. The lasting impact. This case serves as a chilling reminder of the destructive power of jealousy, betrayal, and unchecked emotions. The McCall family's story is one that began with love and trust, but ultimately ended in violence and tragedy. The affair between Mark and Jessica, once hidden, caused irreparable damage to the family and set in motion a chain of events that would cost 2 lives. As for Sarah, her crime has become a cautionary tale about the dangers of jealousy and revenge. Her story is one of heartbreak, but it is also one of the consequences of letting emotions override reason and humanity. What was once a loving family is now a memory of a dark and tragic chapter in the history of crime.